Hey everyone, welcome back. We are going to be refining our red values. So all that means is I'm going to switch from a wider paintbrush to more of a narrow, it looks like I'm using a detail brush at the moment, or I can also use a pretty small version of a round brush. And right now I'm working on her wrinkles. So instead of just, wrinkles can be really hard to perceive how you would do them, but actually what I would do is in the first layer of your process, make your wrinkles as dark as you want, and then every layer on top of that, kind of smooth them out a little bit and not think of them as just one line, but you're kind of thinking of it as a wrinkle that is being caught in a shadow. So there still should be somewhat of a gradient coming out of your wrinkles, just a little bit, and you can fake that with your transparent layers on top of it. And in the eyes, similar, you don't have to go, like, this is the part when you would go more detailed. And, you know, as I said before, how detailed should you go in the end? It really is totally up to you. But remember that details will pull forward and blurriness kind of pushes backward. So if you want to use that as a tool to help you create some depth, you can do that. Otherwise, paintings give you the option of making people stop in front of your work and have an opportunity to really think about details. So you as the artist will make that decision properly. In the last video, I was talking about, like, if you Google something, and all I was going to say is that if you need a tool to help you as an artist, let's say you have a weakness that you're not really quite sure how to help yourself get over that obstacle or that weakness. There really are tools available right now, whether it's something you could find online, or maybe it's a tool that you use with a computer, or it's a tool that you can have in your art studio. The tools are available to kind of help you get over the weakness, and it doesn't mean that it makes you a weaker artist. All it means is that it's going to help bridge the gap of something that maybe at this moment in time you're working on, working towards, but it's not quite there yet. And the more that you do it, you can either continue to use the tool to help you get there or not. And if all of this feels a little bit like cheating to you, I can assure you that the great masters had their own secret tools that they used to help them with their paintings. And if you didn't watch the prerequisite course about transfers, grids, and is it cheating, I would highly recommend watching it because it'll make you feel better about using tools to help you with specific things. And anyhow, so moving on, at this moment in time, I am pushing in some of the darker value reds for my shadows. Hair, I think is a subject that can be a little bit like tricky for new artists about how would you tackle hair. And what I kind of did was, since I already put my highlights and my shadows in by using the transfer paper, I am really just using the white transfer paper to kind of give the illusion that the hair is there. Now, if I were doing this all with a paintbrush and not with transfer paper, I would be doing the same thing, but just with paint instead. And so how I would do that is my first background layer, when you're blocking everything in, just think of everything as like blocks of highlights, blocks of midtones, and blocks of shadows. The only difference is that with hair, you're creating kind of longer blocks that connect together like puzzle pieces. And once you get those initial high contrast values in with the hair, then the layer on top of it, you can soften it and continue to soften it, as we've talked about in this class before, by adding your transparent layers. In the end, once you start adding those layers and you kind of, you know, finesse some of the areas that need a little bit of different saturation values of your midtones, like maybe this is a little bit more red, maybe this is a little bit toned down more. Once you have your midtone values kind of like finessed a little bit, then the only thing you really have to do is, in the end, is add a thin layer of a dark glaze of paint. And it could be your black mixed with your, like, for example, what we're doing right now. We have our local color, our pure pigment, which is a cadmium red mixed with black. Take that, blend it with your gloss glazing liquid, And then you could just push in some darker values in the areas that need some shadow. Maybe right around the hair, underneath the hair, where it would cast a shadow from light shining down. Around the ears, check and see if you have hair that comes down. Like, would you need, whoops, some shadows in this area right here? Any hair coming in front of the face, would it cast, would it cast a shadow onto the face if it's out a little bit? So those are things that you can think about in the end, but you don't have to add those until the final layers, which is kind of where we're getting to at the moment. Okay, hands, as I said before, it's something that I have always struggled with, but by laying in that grid, by laying in that transfer, it has helped me kind of map out how to paint these a little bit and make the process a little bit easier for me. And in the end, I don't think that they look like perfect hands, but in the end, it's that transfer has gotten me to the point where I haven't stopped painting the hands, or like been like, I give up, I can't do the hands, that's it, this painting is not going to exist because I can't do hands. Instead, use the tools like I was telling you about, and hands are definitely weaknesses for me for painting, so I always need a transfer when it comes to painting hands. Yeah, and so another thing too is at this moment in time, the hands are pretty much all laid within your middle value scale. Realism is really in the middle values, I think. Like, if you can kind of get those very subtle changes, I think that's kind of where like photorealism exists, not in the high contrast unless you're in very extreme lighting. And so I kind of tackled the middle values with the hands at this moment in time, and then because I knew it would be easier for me to kind of just do that and just do slight differences, and then if I needed to, I could push in the shadows at the end if things weren't looking completely right. So that might even be a good tip. Anytime you're feeling a little bit insecure about how to move forward, keep the values somewhere close to the local color. This way, you know for sure that if it's starting to look a little bit flat, you can always go back in and add a little bit more highlights, or if it's, you could also push in some shadows with your gloss glazing liquid. But either way, if you're adding just like slight gradients in, you're on the right path. And how extreme you go with that is a decision that you can make along the way. Another tip is, you can see that my paint is drying on my paint palette, and I'm trying to peel it up a little bit to get the paint underneath that I mixed. And I know I've said this in another class, but or it may be in the future lessons, but I highly recommend scraping it off, just remixing your paint, because that paint will come off in chunks. And then if you don't see it on your paintbrush and you apply it to your painting, then your painting can have all these little like bumps on it. And if you get a bump on someone's face, and the client's like, I don't have that bump on my face. You're like, no, you are correct. That was a creative decision. But no, in actuality, just clean your palette. It'll make your job so much easier to have paint that is still buttery, instead of everything feeling a little bit chunky. You can see it happening right now. It's that like red mixed with the black. Another thing to get to know is how fast does your paint dry? And I mean actually just straight out of the tube. So I know that my cadmium red lights dry pretty quickly. My black and blues dry pretty slowly, so it's something to consider. Okay, I will see you in the next video. Bye.